My name is Veima and I am the Communications Assistant for the United Nations Capital Development Fund in the Pacific. I am excited to facilitate this important and timely dialogue on gender mainstreaming and social inclusivity in climate and disaster risk insurance programming. In today's session, besides sharing with you details on the GESI strategy developed by the UNCDF-led Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program, we are joined by a panel of inspirational women who will share their insights, experiences, and valuable perspectives on this topic. Now, before I dive right in and introduce our panelists, let's go over a few housekeeping rules. This panel discussion will run for 1 hour, so please get comfortable. Note that the session will also be recorded and a video will be shared on YouTube in case you miss anything. Lastly, we also want to hear from our audience, so there will be a Q&A session towards the end of the event. So if any questions come to mind, just use the Q&A function somewhere below here. And please also state the panelist who your question is directed to. Now, to kick off, I welcome Merwalesi Laveti to provide her opening remarks on the importance and need for gender and social inclusion in UN programming. Merwalesi wears many hats at the United Nations Development Program Office in the Pacific. She is the gender focal point, where she plays an advisory role on gender equality in development work across the region. She is also UNDP's monitoring and evaluation and country coordination analyst. Her background is in environmental law, and she has a keen interest in species and ecosystem conservation. Thank you, Merwalesi. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Veima. Bulavinaka, everyone, and welcome to the Pacific, and also colleagues that are watching us across the region, and also from across our globe. I would like to just start over that, women's empowerment and gender equality is quite vital. It's not something that is new, but it's something that is very important. And also, it is important to recognize that vulnerable and marginalized groups are also equally important to be empowered in this road towards achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. For UNDP as a whole, it envisions a world of universal respect for, of course, human rights and human dignity, in which every woman, girls, enjoys full gender equality, and all legal, social, and economic barriers to the empowerment have been removed. Today, I would like to mention that some data mention that women today own only 30% of formal SMEs, and of those, 70% do not have access to capital that they need to grow. And this again point to the importance of this particular program in having SDGs to recognize and capture financial inclusion, including disaster and climate finance as a key element in SDG 7, which is also including SDG 5 on gender equality. With regards to UNDP, in specific with our Pacific office, in my role as a gender focal point, our responsibility and role in this particular area is to ensure that all the development program and work mainstream gender equality, social inclusions, and ensure that this is integrated accordingly in its program and project across the Pacific. In that regard, it ensures that UNDP's work also targets to not only a mainstream gender, but to minimize and reduce poverty in that particular work, to build resilience and achieve peace in communities and territories, and also help accelerate progress of 2030 agenda. There are key areas in which we program gender equality into our work. One of it is through our Gender Equality Seal, which is a tool that is particularly used to mainstream gender in all of our development program and projects. The Gender Equality Seal is not only a tool that has been used within the development partners, it also has been advocated to be used for public and private enterprises to come together and contribute towards the achievement of SDGs by reducing gender gaps and promoting gender equality social inclusion and competitiveness simultaneously for a fair and inclusive and sustainable growth. Again, for our UNDP Pacific office, we're glad to mention that we have a UNDP Pacific gender equality strategy, in which today we will be hearing from our colleagues about the launch of the gender equality and social inclusion strategy for this particular program. And the GESI policy that's going to be launched today is contributing to the UNDP Pacific Gender Equality Strategy, in which we are hoping to tackle structural changes to accelerate gender equality and women's empowerment, taking into consideration the importance of social inclusions of vulnerable and marginalized groups, to strengthen and integrate of gender into our work, that is through environment, energy, and crisis response and recovery, and better align our work into the centrality of gender equality, social inclusion, and empowerment. And important is to build an institution mechanism for gender mainstreaming, such as just what I mentioned about gender equality seal. So that is basically how UNDP program is gender equality into its development work and program. And not only that, we work with our implementing partners, responsible parties, and our grantees to build their capacity, strengthen the capacity on gender equality, social inclusions, and also on financial inclusion to accelerate the achievement of SDGs in our Pacific countries. With that note, I hope that the discussion that's going to happen today will, is very informative and also will inform your work in promoting gender equality and social inclusion in the Pacific. Thank you.
Vinaka Mary for setting the stage on why gender mainstreaming is important in all aspects of programming within the UN and beyond. Now I would like to invite Michelle Reddy to provide her power remarks and share the status of gender and social inclusion in the Pacific as it relates to financial services. Now, Michelle Reddy is a queer feminist who has been part of the women's movement in Fiji and the Pacific for over 15 years. She played a key role in establishing the first women's fund in Fiji, the Fiji Women's Fund. She currently serves as a technical advisory member for the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program. And she also juggles a few other important roles as a lover of cities.
Hi everyone. Sorry, Veima, I lost your picture. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm assuming that you invited me to speak. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. The Pacific region is very well known for our great wealth, wealth in our diversity, wealth in terms of our traditions and cultures, our languages, our food, our people and our resources, and so much more. But at the same time, the Pacific region is also very well known for having one of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the world. That is higher than the global average of 35%. Furthermore, the Pacific region also experiences the highest levels of risk that are associated with natural disasters and the impact of climate change. Our geographic remoteness, frail infrastructure, lack of adequate climate and disaster risk financing instruments, and adaptation mechanisms increases our vulnerability. Women and people living with disabilities and gender non-conforming communities are furthermore disproportionately affected. And this is because of existing inequalities that these groups face. traditional societal norms and structures from patriarchal attitudes and behaviors confine women and girls to domestic household responsibilities. It limits their educational opportunities, it limits their political representation, and furthermore, it limits formal economic and financial participation. Pacific women's often weak financial status makes their livelihoods more prone to be hit the hardest in the event of a natural disaster or in the event of an impact of climate change. Post-disaster needs assessments that have been conducted across the Pacific indicate that there is long-term and cumulative impacts on the economy. There's cumulative impacts on economic and employment opportunities, and consequently, people's livelihoods. When we look at women and vulnerable groups, the impacts are further exacerbated because these range from not just economic rights, but range from sexual, reproductive, and health rights to political and social rights. When we look at Pacific labor market, what it's telling us is that women tend to participate less in formal labor forces and are more likely to engage in informal and unpaid labor. So typically when you look at women in the Pacific, they tend to participate in smaller income generating projects. They participate much more in agricultural activities, which generally are the first to be impacted by cyclone seasons. And we in the Pacific know how terrible that is, because when we have cyclone seasons, the agricultural produce, which are typically harvested by women, are affected. The availability of climate and disaster risk financing and insurance instruments is slowly but surely growing. So it's crucial for programs like the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program, which is more commonly known as PICAP. It's very important for programs like PICAP to ensure that such instruments are gender equitable and socially inclusive, to include the most vulnerable and to include the most marginalized. Using a gender lens to customize product design, determine its distribution channels and eligibility criteria is a crucial and major step towards providing equal opportunities, financial accessibility, and inclusion. And I'm so glad to see that PICAP adopts an inclusive market development approach, which essentially means that they make sure that women and those that are part of vulnerable communities are included and have a say in the development of climate disaster risk financial products. So as a pro bono member of PICAP's Technical Advisory Committee, my contribution to the program is to provide advice on programs for funding that received and ensuring that the design of proposals, including in its implementation, is gender equitable and socially inclusive. So today's launch of its GESI strategy is really important, because the GESI strategy provides a technical tool for members like me to use in our contribution towards meeting the goals of PICAP. It also provides both the governance structures, its partners, its funders, and the PICAP team the opportunity to monitor, to evaluate, and to hold ourselves accountable, as well as learning along the process of how we can be better achieving in being inclusive and gender equitable. So I really look forward to the launch of the GESI strategy. And that's all from my end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing some great insights on the realities of gender equality in the Pacific. I'd also like to apologize for the technical glitch that didn't allow me to properly introduce Michelle to you all. Nevertheless, colleagues, I now have the pleasure of welcoming Newa Bulo to share her experience as one of the holders of the recently launched parametric micro insurance product. Please go ahead, Newa.
Place to Lutuka City. I'm married with 3 children. Previously worked for courts for the past 23 years and resigned in 2019 due to family commitments. I now run a small business from my home in Vitongo, which is a game team, and happy to say that I'm earning enough to feed my family and save some money in my saving account with the savings facility at CCSLA Limited. Like Vitongo, where I live, it's a flood-prone area. Flash flooding occurs during sudden heavy downpour or when it rains heavily in the hills, and all those rains flow down and causes the river creeks and nearby overflow and flood our village and settlement. And during that time, we are facing a lot of problems, like everything is just in a mess and we don't know where to start. And in terms of assistance, like government officials, they do come around, but it takes time. Not for assisting a small business like us. It really happens, but it's just the needs, like the food and all those. Eh? And being part of this insurance that have been introduced to us by the staff of CCSLA, we are so happy that we know we are secured. And we are confident if something happens, and it's there. The help is there and it happens instantly. It will take 1 or 2 to 3 days. And like with the CCSLA staff, we are happy with them because the service that they give us, it's beyond our expectation. So when we were coming in for the posting, they were explaining to us, they were informing us about this insurance, and then we said it's okay. We signed our papers and the certificate were given, and you were happy about it. And I've been telling some of my friends and my relatives back home, if they want to join, they can come in and open their account with CCSLA in terms of this help, which is really, and I think it's a great help to us, like small business. And I hope that there will be more service or whatever that will be provided that will meet our needs, because nowadays what I've seen is the damage is big, and the money that is being that we sign is it won't cater, but I believe something is better than nothing. And I hope that they look into it and they'll find a way to increase the premium or whatever they think. They'll assist us in time of need. Thank you.
Vinakanewa, for your inspiring testimony. There are definitely some key lessons we can all take away for future interventions. Colleagues, now I am pleased to introduce Lasana Kumar to share her experience with working to build financial resilience of grassroots people and communities. Lasana Kumar may be a familiar face to some of you. She is the project lead with the Cane Farmers Cooperative Savings and Loans Association Limited, also known as CCSLA. It is a grassroots community-based cooperative that offers value-based basic financial services like savings and loans to cane farmers, fishers, market vendors, and informal workers. Now, Ms. Kumar has been championing gender-inclusive implementation through the active enrolling of CCSLA members into the first parametric microinsurance product, which was developed by PICAP and launched in Fiji on the 25th of August, 2021. Thank you, Lasana, over to you.
Thank you, Veima. Nisambula Vinaka. Good afternoon to you all, the listeners in Fiji and from around the world. Yes, thank you for that introduction on CCSLA. Veima, Cane Farmers Cooperative Savings and Loans Association Limited, a cooperative organization that's based in Lautoka, and that is involved mainly in recruiting grassroots level communities based in the cane field areas, cane farming communities, and now that has branched out to the non-cane farming communities. Last year, when this financial resilience project was rolled out, the microinsurance product, we were very fortunate to have been chosen by UNDF PICAP as an aggregator to be able to roll out this product, because we found it suitable for our members, for the type of members that we work with. So some strategies that we used to build financial resilience at grassroots level, we carried out trainings and workshops on financial literacy and this microinsurance product. We went out into these various communities, around Lautoka, from the cane farming areas, from Rakiraki up to Singatoka. We even reached out to Vanua Levu, the other main island, and yes, we were able to implement these workshops with the assistance of PICAP, and rolling out this product, alerting the grassroots level communities, the participants, on the importance of financial literacy, the importance of signing up for this product. This product serves as a backup for these vulnerable communities during natural disasters. When a disaster strikes, they do not know where to turn to. They're very vulnerable, and in particular, the women, okay? Because, women are mainly considered as the better decision makers in families. They have to handle a lot. They are wives, they are mothers, they are daughters, they are aunties, and they are mainly considered as the backbone in many of these rural communities. They do fishing, they do farming, vegetable cropping, they sell in the market. So when a disaster strikes, they are the ones mainly affected, because they are involved on the ground with their activities. They're generating a source of generating income, which they are able to earn and feed their families. Other strategies that CCSLA focused on was, when we went out during trainings and workshops, we tried to target more women groups and individuals, including those with disabilities. And we are happy to say that we managed to sign up at least four recipients or pilot members with disabilities. Also, we try to involve more women participation at all levels. The number of staff at CCSLA, we are glad to say that we have 9 women and 3 men that are staff. So it all starts at the at all levels from our office, and we are able to take it out into the communities. When we went out for the workshops, at these rural communities, at this rural level, it's mostly the men. They participate when there's a workshop, when there's a meeting, when there's a mbose vakoro that's called. It's usually the men that attend. But we were able to reach out to the Turanganikoros, our area directors, to encourage women to also come and participate in these workshops, so that the men are also present there. They listen, they learn what women can do, what they can achieve. Also, we managed to diversify into other segments of the beneficiaries, as already mentioned. We tried to focus on female market vendors, fishers, vegetable and crop farmers, and female micro business owners, SMEs, as you've already heard from one of them, the previous speaker, Newi Ambulo. She's a very successful SME. She owns a home canteen, and she's very hardworking. And with that, we were able to target more female, SMEs, those who own home canteens. They managed to bake and sell, cook and sell, something of that sort. Also, we have extended financial assistance and services to these new segments, financial assistance in terms of loans, savings, shares, and term deposits. I'm not able to share my screen. However, I will just quickly share some statistics which shows the majority of female participants that were able to sign up through CCSLA as an aggregator. For instance, at the end of the first quarter last year, 2021, CCSLA managed to sign up, or rather CCSLA managed participants, total participants of 166 women and 79 men. So you can see the distribution there. We had more participants, we had more female participants, and that was very encouraging for CCSLA and even for PICAP and for the community at large, that more women are aware of what is happening on the ground, of the product being rolled out, and for them to come and listen and get trained on financial literacy and financial resilience. At the end of the second quarter of 2021, the numbers went right up. We had 257 female participants and 222 male participants. So that was more encouraging, because from the first quarter to the second quarter, when we finished the first quarter, the word went out. The word went out, the distribution of brochures and on social media, that CCSLA was rolling out this micro insurance product, taking it to the communities at large. So, the word went out, and hence the participants began to stream in. So when we took it out to individual communities, they just came, and that was very encouraging for CCSLA. At the end of 2021, the totals were, sorry, I think I have that wrong. I'm sorry, I think I have that wrong. That should have been 423 females and 301 males, which totaled to a total of 724 participants at the end of 2021. And the pilot members signed up. We had 253 female participants that signed up for this microinsurance product and 177 male. So there was a total of 430 pilot members that signed up for this microinsurance product through CCSLA. And the number of signed up members with disabilities were only 4, and they were males. So that is a target for CCSLA this year, 2022, when the training and awareness resumes in July. We are targeting to include more signed up members, as females with disabilities. Thank you. As far as partnering with UNCDF and insurance companies are concerned, CCSLA will be forever indebted to UNCDF for identifying us as a potential aggregator to roll out this first ever microinsurance in the Pacific. Since its establishment in 1968, this is the first ever major funding channeled to the association. Previously, CCSLA has been knocking on all doors to have some funds or grants channeled into the association so that we are able to assist these grassroots level communities. So we are very fortunate to have come into contact with UNCDF and PICAP. And we felt that this product and this partnering with PICAP was very timely. This product was rolled out and introduced in a timely manner. Reason being, it is very suitable. This product is very or most suitable for our existing members, considering the target groups that we associate with, the beneficiaries that come from the grassroots level communities in Fiji. So we thought that this would actually assist them and cushion them during natural disasters or post-natural disasters, that there is some backup, financial backup for these communities, while waiting for assistance to stream in from the relevant authorities or from the donors. So they at least have something to fall back on that can assist them, instantly, that comes from the insurance companies. Also, like I've mentioned, yes, this product serves as a financial backup for majority of our members who are from the grassroots level communities. CCSLA is known generally in the West as the Poor Farmers Bank. Reason being, we deal with these poor farmers and non-cane farmers that are not able to save or open an account with the commercial banks, that are rejected by the commercial banks. They run to CCSLA because of our services, because of the flexibility of the criteria that we have. We try to facilitate the opening of accounts and the savings for these members. Lessons and plans learned for the future. Some lessons that CCSLA learned while rolling out this product. When going out into the communities, it sort of widened our perspectives on the customers' real life situations on the ground. Before, we would just concentrate on cane farming, on cane farmers, because initially the cooperative organization was established to assist only cane farmers of Fiji, okay, in Vanua Levu and in Viti Levu. However, we had seen the need to branch out or to diversify and start assisting the other segments of the country. So with this, when we went out into the communities, we saw what the customers faced, what the members faced, these beneficiaries, what were their real life situation on the ground, their testimonies, the sharings that they would do with the staff, that they would share with the staff during training and workshops. So, we sort of, it deepened our knowledge to know what actually they faced on the ground and how we can assist them. Secondly, like we said, balanced priorities for both cane farmers and non-cane farmers. Previously, the focus was only on cane farmers, but slowly CCSLA has had to go back to the drawing board and revise its visions and missions and goals to be able to assist all the beneficiaries of the various segments that it has managed to recruit. Also, we've managed to extend wide range of services, customer services for the different segments and their needs. And another thing that we learned was follow-up and feedback. And that is very important for pilot projects such as this. Mostly, we had seen and learned that a lot of times when projects such as this are being rolled out, aggregators or partners would actually just go out onto the ground and do their training and workshops or whatever they're supposed to do and go back to their offices, and then they forget about these participants or the pilot members, because that is the testimonies that we got back from the participants. A lot of times they would say that a lot of authorities or a lot of organizations and NGOs would come, share, do the training and make false promises. Some will actually carried out with their promises and never got back to the communities to find out how they are doing. Was the training effective? Did they learn something from there? So that is something that CCSLA learned, that follow-up and feedback is very important. And for us, this is something that we plan to continue because we already have our members in all the communities, and it is very easy for us to go back into those communities and find out from our members, our member participants, how they are doing, if the training was effective, and that they have learned something. Secondly, plans. Some of the plans that CCSLA has in store, as I've already mentioned, the organization is in the process of revising its bylaws, mission, vision, and objectives to be able to cater for the new segments that have been recruited through this microinsurance product. Also, we plan to integrate a wider range of services and upgrade our IT to cater for the new segments. Thirdly, more workshops and trainings are needed for our staff and the members. Also, something that we plan is to incorporate more digital tools and platforms in order to reach our increasing membership in the remote areas. For example, we are in the process of working with Vodafone and Digicel to create our M-Pesa and MyCash platforms to be able to reach out to the participants, to our pilot members. I know time is running out, I'm sorry. Lastly, no one is left behind. How has CCSLA managed to include this in their project? First, we have identified existing members with some disabilities and ensured that they attended the trainings and signed up as pilot members. Two, CCSLA as an incentive paid for the first year premiums for majority of our members who were mostly women in 2021. We managed to sign up 430 members in total. Third, we managed to hold workshops and trainings in the vernacular languages in these rural area communities, taking into account the literacy, of our members. Also, we managed to work with other stakeholders like Consumer Council of Fiji as advocates for the product. And also we are working with the Markets for Change to recruit and sign up at least 100 female market vendors in Kandavu in 2 weeks' time. So that is all from CCSLA. And I hope that we will continue to work together with PICAP and the other stakeholders. Thank you, Veima.
Thank you, Lasana. It's always inspiring to hear about your experiences on the ground. I now invite Amit Kumar, UNCDF Technical Specialist, to share some key aspects of the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Strategy as the lead author of the strategy. Now, Amit has over a decade of experience in developing inclusive finance services in Asia and the Pacific. He leads PICAP's work on digital innovations and products. Amit has also supported development programs in implementing gender smart solutions. Amit has also lived and worked in several Pacific Island countries. Thank you, Amit. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Veima. Hola, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see my screen as well as the presentation. I will quickly walk you through the main points based on which UNCDF's PICAP programs, gender equality and social inclusion strategies based on, especially giving some insights into the thinking that went behind it and how practically, what are some of the practical tools and initiatives that the program is taking to mainstream social inclusion and gender equality into our programming. Let me walk you quickly through. This I thought would be interesting for participants to know. This is based on a survey that we conducted in Fiji and Vanuatu, where we learned that among the women that we surveyed, 94% had experienced economic losses. Some lost their houses, some lost their businesses, but here you can see the type of losses, mostly related to sources of incomes, assets, and on the right side you can see what were their main sources through the recovery process. Now, another interesting insight that came from here was if you see majority of the losses pertains to immediate, near-term, morely immediate income loss. Similarly, from the recovery side, when you start recovering, you can see the measures taken for recovery also then exacerbate the income loss, because people don't have, women were typically selling assets. They were using savings or taking loans which then need to be paid back. So if you see this in a way like you have immediate loss and then you have a loss of your income that is deferred because now you don't have the assets that were generating income. So it does affect the income primarily when you have a natural disaster that's striking. So knowing this and a number of other challenges that we have heard from other panelists and from the program's years of experience in the region, the UNCDF's PICAP program has been implementing a number of initiatives with the goal of supporting climate and disaster risk finance, especially climate risk insurance solutions in the Pacific markets. The GESI strategy, which stands for Gender Equality and Social Inclusion, it narrates what programs approach is, how it goes about implementing its approach, what are some of the tools and the initiatives, and what are in which way it ensures that the programs that it runs or the project that it runs, they are also GESI responsive. So the strategy kind of gives a general overview and a little bit more details, which you are, of course, we would very much welcome that you go to our website, for which I will share the link. Also, it will come hopefully in the chat window. So you can go through the strategy. It's not a very long document. We have tried to keep it very practical and very informative. But I'll go through some of the points, especially introducing some of the tools. Main approach for the program to mainstream GESI is we see GESI as part of it is an integral part of the business that we do. In this case, GESI is both mainstream through our operations as well as the way we do programming. Programming here means in the form of whom we partner with, how those partnerships are defined, what type of products we create and what type of products and channels we support in the market, which groups we work with. Gender and social inclusion remain very much part of those approaches. Similarly, programs governance make sure that we have advisors, we have representatives who are able to guide us, who are able to guide us in ensuring that our program remain GESI relevant. The other important, or I would say the core of PICAP's GESI strategy is a project design tool. We also use it for assessments. It follows 6 design principles. Each initiative that the program supports, whether technically or financially, has to go through this assessment, and we regularly update the assessment. And these are the 6 principles and that we ask our partners, and we look through the project implementation and see are there gaps in these areas, because these are the 6 principles that we have learned over years in the Pacific region, especially in the Pacific region, and more so within the climate risk insurance domain. If we care for these, we greatly improve our chances of making our products and services more and more relevant. Maybe I'll just go over 1 or 2 of the principles here. For example, relevant use cases. So here the idea is product itself may be great, but it needs to be usable. Like if I am a woman user, I need to have a real use of it. If it doesn't cover the type of so-called perils that affect me or my business or my income, for example, if it's due to wind, I lose the structure, for example. So it needs to be really useful for me. So use case is really critical. Similarly, aspects like accessibility. We know and we have heard that in general, like the target group that we work with, low-income families, farmers, households, women, many of them live in not always in cities, you perhaps know and we have heard that people are doing multiple work, especially women. They take care of business, they take care of families. So not everyone has time to go to offices, so we try to look into aspects related to accessibility, for example, using digital tools and methods. And so these 6 design principles help us structure our projects to make sure it kind of gives us a lens. And it's not just an assessment lens, it also helps us guide the design. If we see there are gaps around, let's say, user-centered communication, that communication is not sensitive to the different needs. If there is a project that specifically targets people with different abilities, then the communication needs to be altered. This slide here, I wanted to highlight some of the initiatives that the program is been trying to implement or have been implementing that particularly promote gender equality and social inclusion. I do want to note that all our initiative, it is by our design, our what we call product design. We are by our design required to make sure all our initiatives promote and include inclusiveness. Here, some things, for example, we are actively trying to promote the use of digital channels, which we have found greatly improves accessibility. We are also working with partners like the World Food Program and Fiji government in rolling out special coverage plans that make it easier for people who primarily their primary source of income is social benefits, so they are also covered. So likewise, there are a number of initiatives. There are some items I have marked stars. These are still, we are testing these models. So we hope that, some of the tests allow us to refine those approaches, and then they can be put to scale by the private sector. This slide highlights some of the results that the program has achieved within 1 year. The orange figures you can see, they represent the percentage of women in those numbers. For example, within 1 year, the program was able to issue 1,388 policies, of which 32% were issued to women. There were a number of trainings conducted, number of products have been piloted. We are still testing several methods, some digital rollout methods. Likewise, we are also actively looking to work with more and more grassroots partners. We heard from one of our partners, CSLA. We are also actively looking to increase those number of partnerships in the market. You would notice that these numbers for women are 32, 42, 42%. Whereas our mandate requires that we have at least 50%. This I wanted to highlight here to show the real challenge when you are still so focused and really trying to make sure that you are GESI inclusive. It is still a challenging task to be able to achieve those numbers, but we are very committed. Since it's just our first 1 year result, so we are very, very committed at trying our best to make sure we not just meet, but exceed our target of at least 50%. I do encourage everybody to have a look at the GESI strategy, which just gives more details to some of the topics that I mentioned. It also provides tools. Hopefully some of these tools you can also find useful. And yeah, our team is certainly here to provide further information or answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit, for providing an overview of the GESI strategy. Now, colleagues, I know we are running short on time. I did want to open up the Q&A session for maybe at least another 3 to 5 minutes. We have some active panelists who have been answering your questions in the Q&A box as soon as you've been typing them in. But if there are any more questions, maybe you could just raise your hand and we could ask the question that way.
as that says.
Since there are no questions, I do have one for Michelle. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Yes. Now, Michelle, can you highlight 2 to 3 key areas specifically that programs working on working on the financial empowerment and inclusion of women need to be mindful of?
Thanks, Veima. I was actually thinking about what that looks like. I think that when it comes to especially product design, I think one of the things that's really important to think about is eligibility criteria, you know, like who has the opportunity to be able to use these products. The other areas also I was thinking about, particularly when you're looking at insurance instruments, is distribution channels. So when you're looking across the Pacific based on geographical locations, different countries have access to different things, right? Like, so for Fiji, depending on where you live, if you're thinking about the urban centers, a lot of people have access to phones, and when you think about access to internet, it's a lot more better. But when you move outside of the city and you're looking at rural and remote areas, what are those things that you're looking at when you're thinking about how you're going to distribute a particular product? You know, what are the accessibility channels or accessibility criteria that you are thinking of in terms of ensuring that not just women, but also people living with disabilities have access to, because there are different accessibility issues that you'd have to think of, especially when you're thinking around women living with disabilities or people living with disabilities. I think the other thing also around product design is the perception of who makes up women, because women are not really, you can't think of women as this one entity and everyone fits in this really perfect boxes. They're not. We have very different identities. And when you're looking in gender non-conforming communities, that's even more challenging. But that's also not a reason not to try, right? And I think that's why I made the comment around making sure that programs like PICAP and other programs are really invested in monitoring, evaluating, being accountable to ourselves and others, and learning. Because as you monitor and as you evaluate, you are understanding better what works, and what you perceive would work may not actually work in real life, and trying to adapt and be flexible in the way that you do product design and product implementation. Because I think, you know, what you think of at the beginning of a program is great, and it's based on a particular context, but context is not stagnant. It changes, you know, things evolve, people evolve. So being able to analyze that, being able to take that into account to then change and shift, I think is really important. I think apart from that is also communicating that, because you may know that as a program and you may know that as a team, but I think being able to share quite openly what are some things that have worked really well and what are some things that haven't worked, but you've learned this and you're now going to trial this. Because I think one of the challenges and coming from the development sector and working in the women's movement is that we find and we perceive that challenges is problematic. I don't think challenges are problematic. I think challenges are actually an opportunity to learn and to adjust and to then try something new and see how that works. So when you're looking at GESI or gender equality and social inclusion, it's one thing, one of the things that I would say is being able to be open to changes and adapting and trialing things, because you're not going to have the answer in all at once. It's not it's not possible. I think being open to that is really key for a program like PICAP.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. You made some really important and some really important points for us to be mindful of. We'll take one more question. We have a question here from Chale Samawai, who's from the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. And we'll direct it to one of our aggregator partners, so I'll direct it to Lasana. And the question was, what has been some key challenges in engaging women to be involved in the program?
Thank you, Veima. Yes, okay, as far as engaging women were concerned, I mentioned earlier, and I think I answered one of the questions also. Women, a lot of them were interested in, signing for the program. However, they had to take permission from their husband, before signing up. A lot of them, we would sit with them after the training and workshop. Some of them wanted to learn more, so individual attention was given by the project team from CCSLA. And these were some of the interesting comments or feedback that we got from the women. It was a little funny, but then when we got back and really looked at it, there's still that that mindset, coming from the husbands and the males that needs to be changed and looked at. Because one of the answers from one of the ladies was, just wait, I have to talk first with my husband. I ask him and then I'll come back to you people. So, along with the training, from there, when we went out to other communities, we also tried to educate the men that it is very important that they allow their women or their wives to make some independent decisions such as this, to sign up, especially when they were involved in running home canteens and small catering businesses, and so on. I think that was the major challenge that we faced. Also, another challenge that we faced, as you can see from the statistics that was shared by myself, there was a lot of women that actually came in and participated and signed up. But most of them, if I may say on this platform, most of them did not have the finance to cover their first year premium. So we felt for them, and we thought that if we could, provide an incentive or do something that would actually encourage them. So CCSLA volunteered to pay for majority of the members that signed up, pay for their first year premium. Considering the time factor, it was very little time in order for them to get that 100 in order to pay for the premium. So from there till this year, we also educated the signed up members and the women to start saving up $10 every month. Save up with CCSLA in a particular account which has been created just for their premium. So, monthly installments. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lasana. And I'll close off the Q&A session now. Thank you all for participating. Now, to wrap up the session, I will invite Angeline Fatiaki to share some closing remarks. Now, Angie is an experienced senior program manager with a demonstrated history of working in international development, managing Australian aid programs across gender, economic, governance, education, and regional organizations over the last 10 years. She currently manages Australia's regional gender and child protection programs and partnerships with SBC, UN Women, UNICEF, UNDP, and Cardno. Welcome, Angeline, for your closing remarks.
Thanks, Veima. Can you hear me? Veima, just checking that you can hear me. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Bulvanak to you all, and thank you very much for attending this session. It's been really a learning curve for me as well to listen to PICAP and those panelists today. I'm sorry, I won't take too much of your time. I know we've gone over the 1 hour. So I just wanted to, my role would be to say how this aligns to Australia, which is one of the donors of this program, and its strategies. So PICAP's approach towards achieving and mainstreaming gender equality and social inclusion of its activities and programming strongly aligns with Australia's approaches to ensuring GESI in all its development programs, and as a donor, this is wonderful to see. As we all know, gender inequality is an important right and a powerful driver for growth, development, and stability. As mentioned by fellow panelists, a gender-responsive lens is crucial and must be applied to all activities that ensures gender-differentiated systems, address barriers, and identify opportunities for enhancing women's health, women's economic empowerment, and women's safety. It also ensures a do-no-harm approach and is taken to engaging women in program activities and appropriate mechanisms in place to protect women who may be at risk. At the heart of it all, Australia's foreign policy has a strong focus on the empowerment of women, and this is reflected in the DFAT white paper citing that gender inequality undermines global prosperity, stability, and security. As a donor agency, performance on gender equality is explicitly measured as part of our performance assessment framework in the Partnerships for Recovery, with internal DFAT resources dedicated to ensuring gender equality is mainstreamed through all our Australian investments in the Pacific. Our programs provide technical support to gender mainstream in the Pacific and are delivered through DFAT's bilateral programs, regional organizations such as SPC, PIFs, UN agencies, managing contractors, NGOs, and CSOs. Australia continues to work with partners in the Pacific to address climate change and strengthen socially inclusive, gender-responsive, sustainable development in our region, as outlined in DFAT's Climate Change Action Strategy, which has released a $500 million climate change funding package to support this. Under this Pacific Step Up, Australia is making its highest ever contribution to Pacific development, and a dedicated gender program known as Pacific Women Lead will deliver social and economic results for women and children in the region and leverage Australia's suite of Pacific bilateral and regional investments to enhance our efforts to improve gender equality in the region. The Australian $170 million program over 5 years from 2021 to 2026 will enable Australia and the Pacific to work in partnership to strengthen regional gender equality efforts, responding to regional commitments such as the Pacific Leaders Gender Equality Declaration and the Pacific Platform for Action. This funding is in addition to our bilateral commitments in countries. So the new program builds on Pacific Women Shaping Pacific Development, which many of you would have known was a 10-year program ending this year, committed $320 million. And building on that is the new program known as Pacific Women Lead, which is has a hybrid model. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that attended this session and to the panelists, and it's great to hear everyone's hard work in ensuring that gender is included in all our activities. A few of the targeted gender and climate change investments are the Pacific Women Climate Negotiators, Climate and Oceans Support Program in the Pacific, Shifting the Power Coalition, Private Finance and Advisory Network, the Markets for Change program mentioned here, and one that's key for our sort of work is the Australia-Pacific Climate Partnership, which is working with Pacific Island governments to deliver climate and disaster resilient low carbon growth. The Climate Partnership also supports our work here internally and all our partners across the Pacific. Once again, congratulations UNCDF and UNDP on the development of your soon-to-be launched GESI strategy and on working to ensure women, girls, and marginalized vulnerable people are included in the development of your products across the region. Vinaka Vakalevu.
Thank you, Angeline. We truly appreciate your remarks. Thank you everyone for staying a bit over time. We have now reached the end of our session. Now on behalf of the UNCDF Pacific team, I would like to thank all our panelists for sharing valuable and thought-provoking insights. I would also like to thank our audience for attending and participating today, and our sign language interpreters for the good job they always do. As mentioned, a recording of this session will be available on UNCDF YouTube, and a copy of the GESI strategy will be shared with you all. Vinaka Vakalevu and goodbye.